Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He is Ron Filipkowski. And together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is rarely covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, to say that a lot has been happening in the last 7 days since we spoke would be an understatement. The word of the day is chaos. And that sits very nicely with Trump administration, or Trump regime, as I like to call it. Let's get dive straight in with RFK Jr., his hearing on whether or not he's up to standards to run the Department of Health and all that stuff. I mean, this is he's the wrong man for the job. Maybe we should start there.
Well, I'll say, I mean, nobody's been more anti-RFK Jr. since 2020 than me. You know, I've probably posted more anti-RFK Jr. content on social media than anybody. And, you know, his fans are very rabid and very vicious. So I hear from them all the time. And I listen to what they have to say, too, because I think that that's important. I think they're an important voting bloc. I think, you know, there's many people who believe, and I tend to agree with them, that had he not dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump, I don't know that Trump would have won. I think that that really was the margin of victory in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, certainly. Which were very narrow margins. And, you know, RFK had a decent chunk of voters, at least 4%, I'm going to say 3-4% nationally, at least consistently.
At his peak,
yeah, so you can't just ignore this guy at all. I think it's a huge mistake, especially since most of his following is young. It's actually people under 40, predominantly male. And this is a demographic that Democrats are not doing as well with as they used to. And I think there's a reason for it. But I want to break down the hearing in two phases, give probably two takes that nobody else has given on this. One is more of like a tactical, strategic take, and the other is more of a big picture take. The first part, we can take them one at a time, is, you know, I know this is not the Judiciary Committee or oversight. And so I know that the people on this committee for the Democrats, the senators, are not necessarily all lawyers, or they don't have trial experience. And, you know, they're on this committee because they're interested in healthcare, right? I get that. And that's fine. But, you know, it just seems to me like they need to have someone on their staff, someone on the committee staff who is a trial lawyer, you know, who has, and I'm not talking about someone who went to Harvard and became a law professor and then worked in government. I'm talking about a bare knuckle, you know, person who has been in criminal courtrooms as a defense lawyer, prosecutor, who's cross-examined thousands of witnesses. Because look, I spent 29 years in a courtroom. I've cross-examined many thousands of witnesses in that time, and from murder trials, racketeering trials on down. So when I watch these hearings sort of with that background, it's hard for me to watch it. It's painful because I know how I could write out a cross-examination for these people that would destroy this person. And it's frustrating to me knowing all the funding and all the money and all the staff that they have. It just seems like they don't have anyone who understands how to do this, you know, and I could do it. I mean, look, here's the thing. There's probably 10,000 lawyers in the country who are really good cross-examiners. It's less than 1% of the attorneys, but there's probably 10,000. So let's say half of them are Democrats. I think you could get someone, you know, to use some PAC money, use some staff, you know, we got this big RFK hearing come up. Write us out. You know, there's 10 of us on the committee. We get 7 minutes each. Write us out 1 hour of cross-examination questions and we'll divvy them out. Because, you know, what I see are like they get 7 minutes. They spend the first 5 minutes giving a speech and then they start yelling and, you know, they get virtually nothing. And this guy has a treasure trove of stuff. He's got a lifetime of stuff to go after him with. And I'm just watching the hearings and yeah, I mean, couple of them got a few good shots in and stuff. There were a few moments, but I was pretty disappointed tactically. I just felt like they need to understand how to do this a lot better. I think the Democrats on the oversight committee do a great job. and the Judiciary Committee ones do. But again, most of them are lawyers and their staff are lawyers. So it's a different vibe, you know?
It sounds to me like you get as frustrated with the legal side as I do with the journalistic side. You know, I was shouting at the TV during the White House press corps, you know, with all those poor excuses for reporters asking the wrong questions. And so we, you know, I feel you. There is a general lack of quality when it comes to pushback and accountability from journalists, politicians, or whoever. It's just a general dumbing down. It's as if everything is just for show, like it's a TV show, and everyone's playing their supporting role.
Take Sheldon Whitehouse. I mean, who's one of the best that we have, you know, one of the most articulate. But I mean, he was like best friends in law school with RFK. Best friend. They were buddies. And they've remained friends for many decades. So he doesn't even ask him a question. He reads a 7-minute speech and then that's it. And I'm like, dude, like, you're not going to ask him a question?
You got to use this guy. Exactly. Yeah. Because the thing with RFK Jr. is that he just hangs himself all the time. He puts his own foot in it because he contradicts what he said previously. I do have a clip. It's actually a clip of Bernie Sanders interrogating him. Bernie didn't do a bad job because Bernie's always on message, but maybe he was the wrong person for the job too. Let's take a quick look.
I think the gist of what you're trying to say today is you're really pro-vaccine, you want to ask questions. You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Now, you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
leadership. Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. Right. I will. I want good science, and I want to protect.
But you will not tell the organization you founded not to continue selling that product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you denounce these onesies? Might go down in history. You know, there's an interesting angle with RFK Jr. and maybe you can help me out with this. Some of the stuff he talks about is legitimate, i.e., the ingredients in food, right? We're being poisoned here, carcinogenics and everything else, right? And so that would be great. It would be great to have the same tomato ketchup in this country as we have in Europe, which has a quarter of the ingredients. And so he's peddling that stuff which is useful, but then alongside it, he's also a conspiracy theorist. So, you know, how do we get the best of RFK and not the bad bits?
That is exactly my point number two.
You
didn't know that was my point number two.
Well, this is why you and I do a show together, because we're on the same page. Yeah.
My point number two is that I listen to his supporters a lot.
Right.
And this is what I hear from them. And, you know, I think about this because I agree with everything. I buy organic local produce. I go to local farms. I go to farm stands, you know, like I've been doing this for many years. You know, we have something in Maine called the Common Ground Fair, the annual fair, and you go there and everything at the fair has to be made in the state of Maine, and it's all local people. And you go there and it's 20,000 people. And everyone there, I'm telling you, 95% of the people there are progressive Democrats. And so the only person to me, like a national political figure who's out there, who's speaking their language, unfortunately, is this guy. And I feel like the healthy food movement has always been a progressive movement, the organic farming movement. This has always been Democratic turf. And yet somehow we have ceded this turf to this lunatic, this conspiracy theorist, because most of his followers follow him for that message. They're anti-vax, but for the most part, what you hear from them more than the anti-vax stuff is that other stuff. The school lunches need to be healthier. We got to stop eating junk food. We have all these diabetes problems. And you know what? I agree with all that stuff. But then I listen to the Democrats on this committee and in Congress, and I don't hear very many of them talking about this stuff. So if this is stuff that progressives really care about, which they do, why are our politicians just defending pharmaceutical companies all the time?
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. The conspiracy is that the food companies are in cahoots with the medical and the pharmaceutical companies. We'll make you sick with the food, and then we'll fix you with our meds.
And it doesn't help when the senators on this committee, most of them, are taking in millions of dollars in political contributions from pharmaceutical companies. So it feeds right into their conspiracies. So tactically, I talked about that. Let's put that aside. But really, like, the Democratic Party needs to take a step back and win back those RFK voters by taking some of his message, not the vax stuff, but the other stuff, and saying, well, we believe in this stuff, but they don't talk about it. We need to get those voters back away from him. And you're not going to do it by carrying water for the pharmaceutical companies and the medical insurance industry. You're just not going to do it that way. And, so I just think, like, the Democrats just have to rethink their whole approach to health and figure out why it is that some of these people are gravitating towards RFK, because they think it's just anti-vax, and it's not.
So the other spanner in the works is that Caroline Kennedy has got in touch. Is that his sister? Am I right in saying?
No, it's his cousin.
It's his cousin, right?
Yeah.
And she's broken her silence in a message to senators, and it's actually quite moving the way she talks about him. Let's have a listen.
I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. He's always been charismatic, able to attract others through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risks and break the rules. I watch his younger brothers and cousins follow him down the path of drug addiction. His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks. It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence. That was a long time ago, and people can change. Through his own strength and the many second chances he was given by people who felt sorry for the boy who lost his father, Bobby was able to pull himself out of illness and disease. I admire the discipline that took and the continuing commitment it requires. But siblings and cousins who Bobby encouraged down the path of substance abuse suffered addiction, illness, and death, while Bobby has gone on to misrepresent, lie, and cheat his way through life. Today, while he may encourage a younger generation to attend AA meetings, Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs. Even before he fills this job, his constant denigration of our healthcare system and the conspiratorial half-truths he's told about vaccines, including in connection with Samoa's deadly 2019 outbreak of measles, have cost lives. And now we know that Bobby's crusade against vaccination has benefited him in other ways too. His ethics report makes clear that he will keep his financial stake in a lawsuit against an HPV vaccine. In other words, Bobby is willing to profit and enrich himself by denying access to a vaccine that can prevent almost all forms of cervical cancer and has already been safely administered to millions of boys and girls. During my time in Australia,
It's so nice to actually listen to somebody who's normal, who is just speaking in the moment, who is present, who is not living in an alternative universe, because we don't hear much of that these days, do we?
Yeah, and she made the most persuasive case against him that I've heard from anybody, more persuasive than any politician. And, I know that here's how this played out. I mean, she was ambassador to Australia for the Biden administration. So she said, I couldn't speak out or get involved in politics while I was in that job. Okay. All right. Well, it doesn't stop any Republican, but all right, fine. If you want to, play by all the rules, that's cool. And then she said she was hesitant because she doesn't like to talk about her family members. And I get that too. But then, her son, Jack Schlossberg, who's JFK's grandson, kind of put out a very frustrating, emotional video like a week ago and just said, where are all my family members? You all know who this guy is, and none of you are speaking out. It's time for you to speak out. And then his mom put out this video, and, it was powerful. And it was yesterday. And I thought it was good timing. By the way, RFK has another hearing tomorrow with a different committee. He's got two. So, there's another crack at this tomorrow. But I thought her message was perfect, which is, look, the stuff he's saying, we all agree with a lot of it, but he's a fraud. He's co-opted this messaging. He's a con man, and he's unstable. And, we barely scratched the surface of the stuff in his background. She mentioned a few things about him, with the drugs and the cruelty to animals and all this kind of other stuff that we all have known. But there's other things too in his background as well. So, I thought her message was very powerful. It went very viral on social media, many tens of millions of views. Whether it makes any difference, look, we need to persuade a few Republicans, and we need to make sure we don't lose any Democrats. And there's plenty of rumors swirling about different Democrats that may vote for him. So that's a concern as well. Is he going to, this might be another situation like another Hegseth, where it's like a 50-50 tie and he gets through. I don't know.
I was thinking about how, Donald Trump is looking to people who are cut from the same cloth as him to employ in his orbit. And, I was thinking if Jeffrey Epstein was still
They're
alive,
very similar people.
he would have given him a senior role in government as well.
I thought,
go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I thought about that today, actually, again, too. I've thought about this before, and it hit me again today, how similar RFK and Trump are in so many ways. I mean, both born to great wealth, both screwed around, weren't serious people. He went off into the substance abuse. Trump went off into the womanizing stuff and the disco era and all that kind of stuff. They both failed at various business enterprises. They're both attention starved. They both have had a gajillion affairs on their spouses. So there's
you could put
so
Hegseth
many
into this group as well, by the way. Pete Hegseth fits very well with this crowd.
You're right. Trump does surround himself on the male side with a lot of people who are a lot like him.
It's almost like the sexual predators. They kind of, they protect each other. And, we saw that in the Catholic Church, for example. I mean, this is a theme. And my fear is that these people, because none of the media have really used the word cruel or evil to describe any of the shit that's been going down over the last week or so. And there is an inherent cruelty to so much of it, especially the immigration stuff and the raids and the chain gangs and all this stuff. And I do wish that we would put some humanity back into this analysis, because it is just so cruel. And I don't know, I just feel like even having this candidate in RFK Jr. who has spent his life, because in the hearing they're talking about children that have died because of the advice that he has given. And they asked him if he took any responsibility for it, and he's just, no, changes the subject. And you could say the same of Trump, all the thousands of people that have died under his watch. These people have no conscience and no soul.
Yeah. And I think that's what Caroline Kennedy was saying there,
Yeah.
and that's why Jack Schlossberg was so frustrated, because they all know, the family all knows the darkness in this man's soul.
Yeah.
And, but it's hard to speak out against a family member like that. I get it.
Let's go to the kind of big story, or the other big story, and that was the temporary pause on federal funding, which just kind of blew up. It's so extreme. It was such an extreme thing to happen with no warning that DC just blew up in chaos, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. I mean, first of all, this is an Elon Musk special. I mean,
Right,
this is,
yeah.
I've said before, Musk and Stephen Miller are running the country. Where has Trump been the last 2 days? He's been golfing. He was golfing yesterday. He was golfing the day before. He was golfing Sunday. Who is in the White House? Stephen Miller and Elon Musk while this is all going down. Trump's on the golf course. So, what did they do? I mean, the thing is, one thing we can always count on amongst their evilness is their incompetence. I mean, thankfully,
They go hand
they're
in
not
hand.
very competent.
Yeah.
This is the gang that can't shoot straight more often than not.
Right.
And if they were more competent, we'd be even in worse trouble. And so what they did is, we've talked about this before. I've written about this before. This is all goes back to the 1974 Impound Control Act, which is, they believe that law is unconstitutional. It's been on the books for 50 years, but suddenly they want to challenge it. And it was put on the books because of what Richard Nixon was doing. Richard Nixon was taking some funding for different government programs and impounding it, just seizing it and sending it back to the Treasury and saying, I'm not going to disperse this money. Congress passes the money. They send it to the executive branch agencies, and it's just a pass through. The agencies cut the checks and send out the money. So the executive branch really has no other role other than to send the money out. So what Nixon was doing is stopping that and sending it back and saying, I don't agree with how Congress has decided to spend this money, so I'm going to seize it and send it back. And so Congress passed the Impound Control Act saying a president cannot do that. So 50 years has gone by. No one's ever tried to do this since. But during the campaign, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump said, we believe this law is unconstitutional. So rather than, announce, hey, we're challenging this law in court or something like that, what do? At midnight, they just freeze all government disbursements. Like, I thought they were going to do it for like one or two things that they disagreed with and use that as like a test case. See, that's the smart way to do it. When I say this is an incompetent gang that can't shoot straight, the smart way to do it is to find one thing that you think is really egregious, some frivolous program or expenditure that you think is just 70% of the American public is going to disagree with it. And you target that and you say, I'm not sending that money out. So it only affects like maybe a small handful of people. And you challenge the law based on that, right? But instead, what do these knuckleheads do? They freeze everything, all money, including Medicaid disbursements to healthcare providers. You freeze the entire government and bring it to a screeching halt. And it's like, of course, everybody freaks out. You allow Democrats to get up off the mat where they've been laying for the last week after getting knocked out.
Sunbathing.
It allows them to get up off the mat and go, holy shit, it's time to start punching back. And, for the first time, I thought they did a really good job yesterday with a coordinated response, where they were all on the same page saying the same stuff. And guess what? It kind of worked where, the Trump administration comes in today and they say, okay, well, we're rescinding it was funny how this played out too, because they say, while a court hearing is going on and an emergency injunction filed by the state governments, while that court hearing is going on, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is saying, we rescinded the order. And then everybody's dunking on him saying, you guys are incompetent. And then she says, oh, no. We rescinded the order, but we're still freezing the funding. We're going to do it a different way. We're going to do it with the executive order. We're not going to do it with this memo. And so what happens is the lawyers for the state take that tweet from Caroline Leavitt and show it to the judge. and say, Judge, look
Yeah.
at this is what they just put out. They're
Yeah.
saying that they're trying to fool you
In real
They're
time.
trying to fool you. And the judge looks at it and says, okay, well, I grant this motion. So, I mean, the press secretary basically lost the court hearing today with a tweet.
Let's take a look at the initial announcement from her. This is the new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who has been getting a very interesting amount of coverage, partly because she's so young, the youngest ever. Secondly, because...
Married to a 60-year-old.
Really?
Yeah, her husband's 60.
There's hope for all of us, Ron.
She's 27.
And I was thinking about the Sean Spicer moment when he first came out and said that was the largest inauguration crowd, period, back in 2017. Her line about $50 million worth of condoms being sent to Gaza is going to go down in history as being like Sean Spicer's crowd size comment. You know, it'll be the first big lie to come out of the press room. Let's take a look at her talking about this temporary pause.
To the other question that you asked about those specific programs, again, I would say this is not a ban. This is a temporary pause and a freeze to ensure that all of the money going out from Washington, D.C. is aligned with the president's agenda. And as the Office of Management and Budget has updates on what will be kickstarted once again, I will provide those to you.
Can you just clarify for a second?
Okay, so what
I was going to mention the cross, purposely wearing the cross on the outside.
Of course.
Big part of this.
But what you just said is illegal. She said, we've frozen all the funding going out because we want to make sure it's in line with the president's agenda. This is money that was passed by Congress before Donald Trump became president. This is just money that's going out through federal agencies that's been already passed and approved by Congress and signed into law by President Biden, right? So he's stopped all that. And she's so how is it that a president has the authority to seize money authorized by Congress and say, I'm going to make sure that I agree with how this money is being spent? The president does not have that authority. That's the whole point. So this whole thing is unconstitutional and illegal. By the way, I thought of Kellyanne Conway because when I first saw her yesterday, because, you know, Kellyanne Conway, when she became press secretary, the first thing that she said was, I will never lie to you. That's the first thing she said.
And that's exactly
the first thing Caroline Leavitt said.
Yeah.
And then she proceeded to lie throughout the press conference.
Meanwhile, 10,000 alternative facts later, and we're living in this kind of weird upside down. The effect of this has had, well, it will affect, and obviously they're going to want to do some of this because they want to flex their muscles and show their strength. But it was affecting potentially the school lunches for vulnerable children and Head Start and childhood cancer research and all that stuff. And Representative Rich McCormick went on CNN to defend this. Let's have a little listen.
Would you support getting rid of, school lunch for vulnerable kids and breakfast and Head Start, for example, and getting rid of childhood cancer research? Do you support that? And what do you say to your constituents? I want to follow up on that question, too, because I didn't hear an answer from you.
Sure. So I'm an ER doc, and I know that philanthropy is where you get most of your money for childhood cancer research, for example. And it's not just you look at what the president just proposed, a $500 billion spending bill on AI to produce cancer early detection in the first stage on most body parts. That's his spending bill where he wants to increase cancer research. So it's just about what part of the money it comes out of. When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the fields before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home instead of going to work at Burger King, McDonald's during the summer, should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review.
I think you're painting a lot of these kids with a broad brush. I would say that's not necessarily a fair assessment of all of the kids. So you would say all the kids in your district who use the free lunch, for example, or breakfast, they're all just sitting at home and not working. Okay, I just want to clarify because that seems like what you were trying to insinuate.
This gives us a chance. No, this gives us a chance, though, to see where is the money really being spent. Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value and work skills for the future? I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge off the government when they don't need to. We don't give people value. We don't give them the ability to dig themselves out when we penalize them for actually working and actually keep them on welfare. That's what's been the inner city problem for a very long time. We need to have a top-down review so we can get people out of poverty, because you know what? America's very good at creating jobs and giving people worth. And we've been very traditionally good at that, but we're losing our way. And that's when we give people incentives to stay at home and not work. That doesn't work for America.
But a lot of these kids aren't even of like working age. They're young kids, and as you well know, and also some of the kids at Head Start, they're like 5 and under. But I just want to ask you because
I do wish that she would have pushed back earlier, because the guy with the thick neck also has a thick head. You know, it's like, is he dumb or is he evil? Which one is it?
Yeah, I mean, his answer to like, for kids who you're getting free lunches who are like 8 years old is get a job, get a job.
Yeah.
And, he gives the game away at the end where he says inner city kids,
Right.
I mean, look, this isn't, he's saying he's got in his head that these are all black kids getting free lunches.
Yeah.
And, they need to be working. Right. I mean, which is crazy. It's nuts. I mean, there are so many millions and millions of rural white kids all over America getting free lunches at school. I mean, who are from single families and, poor families, working class. I mean, so to throw in the inner city thing just shows you he's coming to it with a place of a racism place.
But we find this a lot, Ron, don't we? When we look at these videos and we analyze the people that are saying this stuff, and we're going to come to Tom Homan later, and there's an awful lot of that laced into what he says, that racism is very much at the heart of so much of this. I mean, I believe racism was at the heart of Trump winning the election in many ways. And so,
it always is. Yeah, it always
right.
is.
So here we are now starting to hear the truth. I mean, he wants kids, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds going up chimneys or down mines. I mean, or maybe he just wants them to not be part of society.
So here's what I can tell you. I mean, I grew up with a single mom, clean houses. I was on the assisted lunch deal, where I think I got like half price or something, right? Because my family didn't have much money. I'm pretty sure I worked more jobs than that guy. Growing up, I had all the same kind of jobs he had and more, I guarantee you. But the idea that I would think about taking my like shoveling driveway money and have to spend it on my school lunch, the $20 I got from shoveling driveways, and have to buy a cheeseburger at the school cafeteria with it, and when I'm like 12 years old, that wouldn't sit well with me back then, man. So this guy's just nuts. I mean, he's just crazy. And what's the big deal about having kids who are like underprivileged, whose families don't have money, and giving them a free lunch at school? I mean, I thought RFK said we want everybody to be healthy. Look, here's what I'm for. Make all those lunches healthy. I remember when Jamie Oliver came to LA, right? And he wanted to do the special on school lunches.
Yeah.
And the special was basically about how we can make school lunches better. And he got vilified. He got abused. And I thought, I watched the whole thing and I agreed with everything he said. And I thought it was terrible how he was treated by people. But, you can marry these two things together. You could say, okay, well, we'll give you assistance, but you have to eat healthy food. I'm for that.
But this, to me, Jamie Oliver got attacked because he was like a fish out of water. It was a bit like Piers Morgan trying to tell people not to own guns in America, right? It was just a terrible, terrible idea, probably instigated by a TV company trying to make a documentary. So, but what we have here, to me, this is very similar to like the school shooting argument, that it's like Republicans don't seem to care if their kids get shot in school because the Second Amendment is more important, right? It's the same with food. It's like they don't want to be told that they should be feeding their children quality meals. They'd rather just have no one dictate to them. And this is what's so frustrating, is that it's like when I say Turkey's voting for Thanksgiving, all the people voting for Trump who are never going to benefit from his policies. Everything to me in this country is so upside down. Everyone's voting for the wrong team. And really, all we want as humans, not Republicans and Democrats, is to be healthy, to live well, to have access to healthcare, to have access to quality food, and to not be killed in school. I mean, is that really too much to ask?
But I think there's a big segment that wants to like own the other side too, you know, and
Bingo.
that's part of
yes.
it. It's sort
owning
of like
the libs.
a game with a scorecard, you know, and I mean, we talk about the migrant thing. One of the most popular videos right now on like X, on right-wing MAGA, is migrants being arrested and deported. Like they even say, like, I could watch this on a loop all day. I'd rather watch videos of migrants being put in buses than watch the Super Bowl. This is the most common thing you see on right-wing social media these days. So that's part of it. It's like, and the video that Selena Gomez, was it, who made, where she came on and she was crying about, I mean, that was half my social media feed for 2 days was right-wingers posting that video. They reveled in it. She's crying, she's upset that we're deporting people. That was like, for them, that was like better than sex, that video. You know, they loved it. So there's a big part of that, you know, the owning the libs. We're showing you, look, half the replies on my posts on X are, haha, you lost. So what, you lost? I mean, it's just, that's what they like to do. And that's a big part of it.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about immigration at this point, because yes, we've seen these videos, and the chain gang stuff really just made me so sad. And even walking these people onto a C-17, onto a military transport, which they never use those types of aircraft for deporting people.
They're not
previously.
very comfortable.
Not very comfortable. But this is for show. This is a production. This is what we predicted that Donald Trump would do, that he would send the cameras down. And of course, it wasn't just the cameras, but Dr. Phil was down there as well. And Kristi Noem was down there as well. And they were just trying to turn this into that kind of behind-the-scenes episode of The Apprentice, where Trump kind of shows you what kind of a man he is. I just feel like, I just hope that the Democrats have the fight in them, and the courts recognize that the cruelty here goes far beyond, because I don't believe that they're actually finding the right people. I don't believe that they have that much of an interest to choose only people that have broken the law and who have absconded. I think that they're just going to go after anybody that they can find. I mean, a lot of the people, I saw a couple of guys being taken out of a house, you know, in their pajamas in the middle of the night by ICE people slamming on the door. And these guys, they just look so sad and real, just regular people.
I think that I wasn't sure exactly how they were going to do it, because you never know what the truth is with these people. You know, Trump says we're going to deport everybody, but we know they're not going to deport, 15 million people. That's probably not going to happen. So who are they going to deport? And my hunch, my feeling always was, they're not going to deport people that are like working for big ag, for working for the big corporations, the big construction companies. They're going to leave those people alone. People working in the hotels and all that. That was my theory. And we're seeing this argument over like, who should we deport not in Florida right now between DeSantis and his legislature, which we can talk about later, but we're seeing that argument play out in Florida. But, looking at the Trump administration, it seems pretty clear that although there are many establishment Republicans who are going on TV, people, senators, representatives, who are saying Trump is only deporting the criminals, but it seems pretty clear that like that's what they think is happening. But Homan and Trump and Miller, that's not what they're doing. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to like sell this to the public that that's what they're doing. And they're cherry picking, you know, a guy here or a guy here that has this charge or that charge or whatever. And they're promoting, like, look at who we're deporting. But underneath that is the 99% of everybody else who has no criminal record, you know, who is going to get caught up. So I think what's going to happen is these first few months, they are going to get a lot of people that have committed crimes. But once they're done deporting them, then you got to go after, you know, the person cutting someone's grass and working in a food processing plant or working at a construction site. And that's when this stuff is really going to start to hurt. The impact is going to be felt when restaurants are closing. You know, when you can't get someone to come out and paint your house or something because there's no one available. When we get into that, which I expect will probably be happening around the summer when they start really getting into the real hurt of the deportations, that's when the impact is really going to be felt. And I am convinced now that is what they're going to do. They really intend to deport everyone. When I initially thought maybe not, maybe they're going to let the people that have jobs and stuff stay. No, I think they really do plan to deport everybody.
It reminded me of when Trump was caught off guard being asked about Gaza and the West Bank. And he was like, we're going to get them to go to Egypt, get them to go here. He was describing ethnic cleansing. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I feel as an immigrant here in the US, that really the racism, the xenophobia is at such a level that they can dress it up however they like. They keep saying, oh, we're just making America safer. But statistically, we know that most violent crime is committed by white Americans and American citizens, not by these people who are coming here to seek a better life. Let's take a quick look at Tom Homan on CNN.
What does it take? What is the standard, I guess, to go into an elementary school? Because what we had heard from immigration advocates is that this is going to provide a chilling effect to parents in the school drop-off line or something of that matter.
It shouldn't be a chilling effect unless your child's a terrorist or a public safety threat. If they are a public safety threat, national security threat, they should be chilled. They should be afraid because we're looking for them.
Well, if their parent is here and they're an undocumented immigrant, I think was more of the argument that they were making.
They're not off the table either. I mean, they're in the country illegally, they got a problem. I mean, it's not okay. Look, it's not okay to enter this country illegally. It's a crime. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I wouldn't feel comfortable if I'm in Switzerland illegally. So we're going to enforce laws in this country. So, you know, the schools and the churches and central location was a policy only for ICE. Only for immigration, right? But national security threats and public safety threats have no safe haven in this country, and we'll go where we got to go.
The grey area, Ron, is asylum seekers. You know, it is legal to seek asylum in
They don't
America.
think so.
They don't think so. This is
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. You know, like they are going to sweep up people with pending asylum claims and try and deport them. And that's really going to be when the rubber meets the road, is like when a federal immigration judge says you can't deport that person, and they start doing it anyway against a court order with people with pending asylum claims. I expect them to get to those people. I expect them to scoop up a lot of those people in this very wide net, because the things that Tom Homan is saying is not lining up with the things that many Republicans in Congress are saying.
right.
They are saying, no, we're just going after the criminals. Homan is saying, we're going after everybody. If you're here and you're not a U.S. citizen, we're going after you. And, you know, it's at one point, is this going to apply to like people who are married to immigrants? You know, obviously they've said that they don't think that birthright citizenship is legitimate. When are they going to try and deport people who are born in the United States, children? I think they're going to try and deport everybody. I mean, that's unless someone in Congress stands up like a Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell or something and says, we got to stop now. This is too much. But I don't really see anybody willing to do that. So who knows how far this is going to go? One thing we do know is this will impact the economy in a dramatic way.
Yeah.
And that's where, like I said, in Florida, we are seeing the big business establishment Republicans pushing back now and saying, hold on now, you know, because
well, they don't want to have to pay American workers $15 an hour when they can pay these people $3 or $4 an hour and do it under the table.
It's not even that. I mean, it's not even that because look, I lived in Florida over 30 years, so I know what's going on here. There's construction everywhere in Florida. Everywhere you drive, there's things being built. And they're all migrant workers. Why? I mean, 90%. Why? Because it's 100 freaking degrees with 100% humidity. There's no air conditioning. It's summertime. They don't stop construction from like June to September. It's year round. So it's outside. And, you know, let's face it, it's people from Latin America who are used to that heat, who are used to being outside in that heat, who grew up that way, who are willing to do those jobs because and no, they do pay them fairly well. You know, the pay is not bad. So you could offer those jobs to Americans at $40 an hour, and you still won't get many takers. They just don't want to do those jobs. And so, look, and that's why you're seeing the Florida legislature this week say no to DeSantis and hold on, we have all these businesses in Florida that absolutely depend on migrant workers. You get all these white senior citizens who have moved to Florida, tens of millions of them from New York and from Boston and from Michigan, and they're living in their retirement communities and they're being waited on and served and everything else by migrants. And so what are you going to take all those people? Are the old people going to start working at the golf club and start cutting the grass? No, they're not. And so in Florida, you're seeing a little bit of panic right now in the legislature because also the people who donate money to all those politicians in Florida own those businesses that employ the migrants. Yeah. So they're saying, hold on, not so fast. So what do? They stripped the authority to work with the federal government for deportations away from Ron DeSantis, and they gave it to the agriculture commissioner. Well, guess what? The agriculture commissioner, where are all the migrants? They're working in the farms, right?
And DeSantis,
he's not going to want to deport those people.
He's pretty furious about it. Let's have a look.
It's not enough to just say we're not a sanctuary state, which we're not. It's not enough to just say we don't have sanctuary cities, which we don't. We need everybody on board. We got to work as a team. Otherwise, this stuff just isn't going to work. They also bizarrely strip immigration enforcement power from the governor and give it to the commissioner of agriculture. But agriculture has not exactly been known for immigration enforcement. So it's almost like the fox guarding the hen house. It was bizarre. I think it was more a sop to folks who want cheap labor. That is totally bad policy. That can't happen. They also bizarrely didn't include things we know needs to happen.
America was built by immigrants. This is what's so interesting, isn't it? It's, you know, it is laced into our understanding of the creation of the United States in the Bill of Rights. It's just, you know, we talk about it. It is the fabric of America, and Donald Trump thinks that he can change all that overnight, and it's just going to go down fine, and it's not going to affect the country going forward. The country is still built by immigrants. It wasn't built by immigrants just back then. It's been constant.
Built right now. Sure, buildings everywhere being built by immigrants, roads, everything, bridges. I mean, but you see right there, and this is the reason why I've paid so much attention to what is happening in Florida this week, is because right there is the microcosm of the old establishment Republican versus the MAGA. And you see it right there. And Wilton Simpson, who is the ag secretary, is the old establishment guard Republican who says, if these people haven't committed crimes and they're here working hard and they're doing jobs that Americans don't want to do and raising their families, we need to leave these people alone and give them a path to citizenship. That's what now they may have selfish reasons for saying that because they own these businesses.
Well, it doesn't matter at this stage. At this point.
And then you have people like DeSantis and Trump and Stephen Miller who are just saying, we don't care about any of that. Send them all home and we'll worry about the fallout later. And you have their fans going, oh, look, Democrats they don't want people deported because they just want them all picking fruit, like it's an elitist approach. But it's not just Democrats saying that, it's people like the agriculture commissioner of Florida saying it, who's a Republican.
Well, because food crosses politics. Yeah, it's not like Democrats eat and Republicans don't eat, and this is gonna, I was thinking, they'll deport them all and then they'll have to bring them back on H-1B visas one at a time. Listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and do more on this. We've got this awful clip of this Newsmax host taunting people, complaining about migrant deportations and Latinos eating tacos. That's next on Uncovered. Don't you wish you had a secret weapon? Something that always impresses, a recipe maybe, or even a piece of clothing? Well, a secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life, and that is how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing. As a secret weapon. Timeless, classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. I love my Ace full-zip hooded sweatshirt in a charcoal heather grey. It keeps me warm, makes me feel more confident, because it's quality clothing. Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. Not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. Looking to take charge of your life with full mental clarity this new year? Enhance your sober January and embrace CBD Awareness Month with VIA to experience the powerful benefits of hemp without the high. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, VIA is the Swiss Army knife of wellness, dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. VIA's collection of THC-free products combines minor cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, and CBN with botanical supplements for targeted effects that you can actually feel. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, your focus, or relief, VIA has something for you. VIA is also well-renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THCA flower, soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And this is the best part. VIA legally ships to nearly all states in the US in discreet packaging, delivered directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee, no medical card required. So, if you're 21 plus, check out our link to VIA's website in our description and use code UNCOVERED for 15% off. And if you're new to VIA, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. This year, enhance your everyday with VIA. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Ron, we're staying on immigration just for a moment because it's obviously dominating the headlines and affecting people's lives. I mentioned this story about the Newsmax host taunting people. Just tell us, where did this kind of taco story come from?
Yeah, it's Carl Higbee is his name. Definitely a right-winger. Newsmax host. He does like the afternoon show, like 4 o'clock. I've followed him for quite a while. Pretty repulsive guy, has a lot of nasty things to say all the time. So what he's doing is there was a woman who is Latina who basically put out like a TikTok or something who said, after you deport all of us, good luck trying to find good tacos or good burritos or, good Mexican food. After we're all gone, you Americans who love our food, you're going to have a hard time finding quality food to be eating at Taco Bell, basically, is what you said. So they like to take those things like that and make fun of them. This is what right-wingers do. So, he was basically making fun of mocking her video by eating a taco on the air and saying an American made this taco. It's pretty good. We could make tacos just as good. So the hell with you, That's basically what this clip is.
Here we go.
What are you gonna do? Will you come take it out of my ham? I'm gonna eat half this plate during the break. Maybe I'll call the ICE hotline. I don't know if I'll have enough time. But sure, all kidding aside, it was actually really good taco. These people broke the law. They broke the law to get here.
I mean, this is just blatant racism on a supposed news network. It's just so sad to know that there is a percentage of Americans, I don't believe it's half personally, who voted for this rhetoric, which is what Donald Trump offers, this hatred, this abuse of our fellow man. I mean, considering that much of this country was Mexico to start with, you know, and was, you know, borders were redrawn. I mean, the whole thing just stinks.
So here's what I think. Because you have to think about the other side of the coin here.
Yeah.
They're going to way overplay their hand, and they already are, and they're going to piss a lot of people off, and they're going to make a lot of reasonable people recoil. Today, the Trump administration announced that they're going to send they're going to build a 30,000 bed facility at Guantanamo Bay.
That's right.
To house migrants, okay, as a detention facility, okay. So they're going to overplay their hand on this stuff. So then I thought about 2028 here, you know, the election coming up, midterms, and I thought, okay, but there's a lot of people in the middle who don't mind some of the deportations, and let's face it, Joe Biden deported a lot of people, right?
Just didn't talk about it.
Right. The Democrats have to have their position on this. And, you know, as we've talked about many times, my frustration, I have not heard the Democratic position on this. And it has to be something reasonable and something sane. It cannot be. If Democrats want to win elections, and they lost largely on this issue, it cannot be everyone comes in who shows up at our border, no matter how many there are, no matter where they come from, everyone comes in on an asylum claim and we'll hear your case in 2 years. If that's the Democratic position, Republicans are going to keep winning on this and keep doing deportations. So if you want a reasonable amount of people to be allowed into the country and to get a pathway to citizenship, you have to stake out a reasonable policy. But Democrats have yet to do it. The only Democrats willing to discuss the immigration issue are essentially open border Democrats. The Democrats in the middle don't want to talk about it publicly. So Democrats have to craft a reasonable, more liberal than Republicans, more wide open than Republicans, more sane, but it cannot be Republicans want to deport everybody and Democrats want to let everybody in.
Yeah.
We're not going to win on that.
But that has been Republican talking points for years. That Democrats want open borders. Now, I don't know of a single Democrat that would want open borders. I don't know who. I mean, who has advocated for open borders?
I mean, I think AOC's position is very close to
No, I know her position. She's not advocating for open borders. You
so
know?
We had like 15 or 16 million people come into the country during the Biden administration. Their own numbers admit that. Do you think that's reasonable over a 3-year time period to allow 15 or 16 million people to show up at the border and enter the United States? You think that should be the Democratic Party's position? Because that's a losing position. That cost us the presidency and got us into this mess.
But do you not think that what the difference is the Democratic position and Joe Biden's position on immigration was almost identical to Donald Trump's, just without family separation and you know, remain in Mexico was a thing as well. But ultimately, the Democrats didn't talk about it using this angry and negative and abusive rhetoric and eating tacos on television to kind of make the point.
See,
and I think that this is more of a messaging issue.
Is an incredibly losing argument. You're just wrong. You're just wrong. I mean, we've argued about this before. You're just wrong because the numbers, look at the numbers. Look at any chart you want. Migrants dramatically spiked during the Biden, dramatically from any other administration, dramatically spiked. There's a reason for it. It didn't just happen like through osmosis. It happened because there were policy changes. And our policy essentially was anyone who showed up at the border, and I'm sorry you don't believe that this is true, but the numbers bear it out and the evidence bears it out, was allowed into the country and made an asylum claim. There was almost no one stopped at the border, held, and sent back. Almost no one. And those people enter the country on a 2 and 3 year, they wait 2 or 3 years for their asylum claim to be heard. They're transported through NGOs who are financed by the US government around the country. They're housed, they're provided with food, all of that stuff. What I'm telling you is that the American people, the majority, do not want to do that. And there has to be a democratic policy that is sane and rational and is not that. And until the Democrats come up with one, they're going to keep losing elections. That's what I'm saying.
The other thing that you didn't mention was COVID. And of course, COVID came when Donald Trump was the president. The numbers of people arriving at the border went right down.
For 1 year.
Right? And then when Biden came in over that, then when the COVID was lifted, then obviously the numbers went up. And that showed an unnatural spike.
They didn't return to like Obama levels. They went through the freaking roof.
Okay. Well,
they were like triple. And so it was because we essentially had no policy. Alejandro Mayorkas dropped the ball.
Yeah,
and I know Democrats maybe don't want to hear that, but that's the truth.
Yeah. No, we agreed that they should have put Pete Buttigieg on immigration and switched him out with transport with Alejandro Mayorkas doing something a little more benign, maybe would have helped from that perspective. Let's just talk finally on the immigration front about Kristi Noem. She put out a video of her. It was like she was in an episode of CSI or something, and she was fighting the good fight on the front line. Here she is.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
What did she say? Get these dirt bags
off the street.
Off the street. I'll play it again. It was very short.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, she's just kind of presented the argument that I'm trying to make is, you know, dehumanizing people is clearly what Republicans want Democrats to do. You know, if the Democrats had only dehumanized people and spoke about them like they were vermin, then maybe Republicans would have gone, well, yeah, at least they've got a policy.
Yeah, I mean, she represents like the opposite of Tom Homan. See, like Tom Homan is a thug, you know, and he's just a cruel, racist person. And Noem is more about the show, you know, about pretending to do stuff.
Yeah,
like she doesn't really want to do work necessarily, like do the heavy lifting. If she was the deportation czar, very little would happen. She would do a dog and pony show. She would, you know, get on TV a lot and make a lot of noise and get a lot of attention. Nothing would happen. She's that brand of Republican, and there's plenty of those around. And so that clip, contrast that with Homan, you know, who's just like, I don't care, we're deporting him. I mean, she's all decked out in her gear. She's got her hair extensions. She's got her makeup. She's got her lip fillers going on, and she's all dressed up in her gear, and she shoots her 10-second video, and that's her work for the day. I mean, and then she's going to, you know, they're going to round up some people and she's going to pose with them. And, you know, it's all about like the photo ops with her. So you have this like two layers of this going on with the Trump administration. You have the show people, the show ponies, you know, the people who like the attention and get dressed up in costumes and go down to the border but then you have the real thugs, you know, the Stephen Millers and the Homans who are actually the evil people doing the job. Not that Noem's not evil. She's a pretty bad person, but she's not a serious person. That's the thing. Miller and Homan are serious people. Noem is a circus clown.
And what about use of the military to do this? I mean, they've been talking about the National Guard coming in because, as you said, they don't have the manpower to deport the numbers that they're talking about. And this obviously is a bone of contention because you're effectively using the US military for things that they were not intended for, right?
Yeah, I think about this as a military guy, like being sent to do this. I can remember being sent to fight forest fires in Yellowstone National Park in 1988 when there was a massive forest fire. It was the size of the state of Connecticut. And I remember grumbling a little bit about that. Like, man, this isn't what I joined the Marines to do, fight forest fires. And, but, you do it because it's important. But at the same time, it's like, that's a hell of a lot easier than dealing with people, and there's just no training that you receive in the military on like taking people into custody and handling human beings and deporting them and housing them and all that kind of stuff. We just don't do that. And so the idea that you would pull military people off of important jobs and important missions and send them to places like the border or Guantanamo to guard migrants or to round up migrants is a little surprising to me. It would be shocking to me if they actually use them to go into communities, because that takes it to another level. If they're going to send them to the border to guard the border, okay, that's one thing. That's kind of annoying and not really within their mission. But if they start sending them into communities to apprehend people, then that's taking it to a whole different level. I hope we don't get to that point where that's how they try to use the military. But at this point, nothing surprises me.
Well, I'm sure Pete Hegseth won't take any convincing to get his troops to come and join the good fight, as much of what he's written about in his books is about white supremacy, and it's just too much. It's too much. In fact, maybe we should stay on this subject because General Milley has lost his security detail. This is one of the first things that Pete Hegseth did when getting his feet behind the desk at the Department of Defense. This is pretty crazy, isn't it? He's a 4-star general, former Joint Chiefs of Staff, devoted his whole life to the military. They're now not just taking away his security detail, but they were investigating him because they said that he went against Trump's orders in the previous administration. This is when he had to phone his equal in China and say, don't worry, Trump's not going to nuke you, because Trump's rhetoric at the time was so egregious. He actually probably saved this country from the onset of a war, and now they're talking about removing one of his stars, demoting him so that he loses some of his military pension. I mean, this is a terrible thing to happen to somebody who is arguably one of our greatest military people.
Yeah. Their issue with Milley goes back further. They used, that's the excuse, that they use, that he called his counterpart in China right after January 6th and said, don't worry, we're not unraveling. We're going to have a peaceful transfer of power. Because the idea was that Trump might start a war or something to justify declaring martial law. There were all these conspiracies going around, and he just wanted to assure them that wasn't going to happen, that the military, if he's tried to do a coup, basically what he said, the military is not going to go along with that. And that was basically it. But really, it goes back to the Bible thing, that the holding up of the Bible is when they're, because up until that point, they were fine with Milley. Like, they had no problem with Milley. Trump had no problem with Milley. Neither did any of the MAGA people. But that was the day of the break. And because Milley objected to that at the time, but then he went along with it and kind of like went out there. But then he knew what he was doing was wrong. But again, it's hard for these military guys to look at the commander in chief and go, no, I'm not doing that, and they had to do that a lot. So I think he realized once he got into the middle of that this is screwed up. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be out here. And the next day he apologized to the public. He came out and said, I made a mistake. I should not have done that. We should not have done. That was it. From that moment on, Milley was an enemy of the Trump administration, and Trump wanted to fire him then, but felt he couldn't fire his Joint Chiefs and Secretary of Defense with like weeks to go, right before January 6th too. So I think he felt like he couldn't do it, but always they plotted their revenge. And when he went out on the campaign trail and he talked about getting revenge on his enemies, he talked about it a lot. And then what happened is he got called on it, and Republican congressmen were getting called on it on the Sunday shows. Trump is out there saying he's going to get revenge and retribution on his enemies, all this kind of stuff. And then he was going to be asked about it in the big interview with Bret Baier on national television. That was Bret Baier's first question. But unfortunately, what we found out is Trump got those questions in advance ahead of time from Fox, and they told him, you can't answer that question. They gave him the answer, which the answer became for the rest of the campaign. He stopped saying retribution and revenge, and he said, my success as president for the American people is how I'm going to get my revenge. But we all knew that that was bullshit. That was a canned answer that Jason Miller wrote for him that he gave, or Susie Wiles did. But he never believed that. And so now we're seeing what he really intended to do, which is he has an enemies list and he's going after the enemies. And Milley was high on that list. And so they're starting with the petty stuff, stripping the security detail. Fauci is another one that's on the list.
Bill Barr.
And removing his pictures from the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Now they want to demote him, possibly court-martial him, recall him to active duty. There's all kinds of stuff that they have planned. We're just getting started here on what they intend to do to a lot of these people.
If again, this is not a demonstration of what a dictatorship looks like and sounds like, I don't know what is. Even Fox News had a reporter who was struggling to understand it. Let's take a look.
We've just learned tonight that Defense Secretary Hegseth plans to remove the security detail guarding former Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley.
That's right. Secretary Hegseth has decided on his second day to immediately pull General Milley's security detail, though multiple threats on his life remain. Caroline Leavitt was asked today if the president would take responsibility if anything happened to those whose security he's pulled. The president has said former government officials can't have security forever. Hegseth also ordered a second Milley Army portrait removed from the Army halls and ordered the new acting inspector general to conduct a review board to potentially strip General Milley of a star in retirement for, quote, undermining the chain of command during President Donald Trump's first term. All highly unusual actions. Brett.
Jennifer Griffin, live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank
you. Is this the country you want to live in, Ron?
Let me make a prediction to you right now. At some point in the not too distant future, Donald Trump is going to go after Jennifer Griffin right there. Going to go after her job because she's the only honest reporter at Fox. Like, she debunked his turning on the water story in California. It was her.
Yeah.
She brought out the Milley stuff. She has been doing some really freaking good reporting on the Trump administration this week, the last 2 weeks, and doing it on Fox. And so eventually it's not going to be too much longer before Donald Trump is not going to tolerate this, because she's like literally the only honest reporter they have. So yeah, I mean, it's really scary what's going on right now. Again, but this also, people who are critical of Joe Biden's pardons, and I have not been critical of them. You know, it's like I'm critical of Biden on a lot of things, not on that, because you see why he did these pardons.
Yeah, well, he knew.
Like, they're proving he was right with all this stuff.
Yeah. He knew that revenge would be at the top of Trump's list. And, you know, Trump's face throughout a lot of this when he's not golfing, we touched on this a little bit last week when talking about the inauguration, but he really has this power play that he's running with right now. Like, he almost thinks that he is America. And when he talks about America, he's talking about himself.
Yeah, he talks like that. That's why I always said, like, the best way to understand like what Trump really means is every time he says the U.S. or the country, if you substitute his name, whether it's a social media post or a statement or whatever, that's when you know what he really thinks. And so, yeah, he believes he is the government, that he is the United States, that he is the country. And therefore, you know, when he says something, it's America saying it. And with respect to foreign policy, that's basically true under the Constitution. That's how it works, but not with domestic policy. But he doesn't agree with that at all.
So he lied the other day or the other night about the military entering California to turn the water back on. And he posted, didn't he? The United States military just entered the great state of California and under emergency powers turned on the water flowing abundantly from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. The days of putting a fake environmental argument over the people are over. Enjoy the water, California, he said. He arrived in California the day before this, and apparently he didn't want to meet Gavin Newsom. Like he was like, I don't want to see the governor. But Newsom got wind of this and made sure that he was standing at the bottom of the steps as Trump got off the aircraft and literally gave him the tightest handshake. In fact, there were some pictures of Trump's hand after the handshake that was, the small hand kind of covered in squeeze marks. Newsom played quite a good hand when it came to this, but he also purposely didn't embarrass him because Trump's been running this story about there not being enough water, which is simply not true. What he's referring to is a federally owned reservoir that was down for 3 days for maintenance. That's basically what this is about. But Trump never goes into detail. And
that has no impact on
there's no impact
fires.
on the water supply, right?
Right. It's an agricultural thing.
Right. And when he talks about the environmental thing, he's talking about a fish that is endangered, which again has nothing to do with this and nothing to do with fighting fires either. And so what California did rather cleverly was they debunked this. It took them, a couple of hours to come back with this posting where this is the CADWR posted.
So look at the timestamp.
Right.
1:11 a.m.
Right.
Trump posts this thing at midnight. They're immediately out with this.
They said the military did not enter California. The federal government restarted federal water pumps after they were offline for maintenance for 3 days. State water supplies in Southern California remain plentiful. I mean, this is the way that you have to deal with Trump and his propaganda. You just got to get straight in there. You can't wait.
Exactly. I mean, Gavin Newsom is put on a master class in how you deal with Trump, and they're like every Democrat around the country needs to pay attention to this, whether they like him or not, because he showed how to do it. From what you said, meeting him at Trump, wasn't invited to that. Trump wanted to go out there and do his whole dog and pony show and control everything and lie like crazy. And Newsom wasn't having it. No. You're coming to my state. I'm standing here at the bottom of the steps, waiting for you to get off the plane. You're not going to have 1 minute out of my sight in my state.
Well, he got up to him like this. They were nose to nose. I mean, it was.
And he said, "I'm going to counter your lies from the second you get off the plane until the second you leave." And he's done it with social media. He's done it with videos. Again, take the J6 pardons, perfect example, okay? Mm-hmm. When did Trump issue J6 pardons to all the criminals, his second day in office?
Yeah.
The Democrats called a press conference on that for yesterday. 8 days after, they were going to hold a press conference on the steps of the Capitol about the pardons he did a week ago. It's like, hello, this is not 1995, okay?
Right, that ship has sailed.
He's done 100 different terrible things since then.
Yeah.
And they scrapped it actually because you know why they scrapped it? Because he froze all the money going out of the government. And then they look like idiots because even people were on social media you're really not going to come out this morning and give a press conference on J6 pardons when he basically just shut down funding for 50 million Americans. And they didn't, thankfully, they changed the plan at the last minute and decided to talk about the news of the day instead of something that happened a week ago. And this is what you learn from Newsom. Newsom did not allow any lie to breathe. He didn't allow it to get oxygen. Every time an ember of a lie that was a match that was lit by, and we're using the fire analogy.
I was going to say, there's a lot of fire analogies.
He put it out. Yep. He put it out immediately with the truth. Over and over and over again, he put on a master class, and everybody needs to learn from how Gavin Newsom handled Trump.
We said it last week, but I'll say it again. If there is an audition underway to lead the Democratic Party at this moment in time. He really is. He's got through to the final, hasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I think Gretchen Whitmer also this week clearly signaled she's running because the Senate seat came open in Michigan. Gary Peters announced retirement yesterday, and she said 2 days ago, and she came right out and said, I'm not running for Senate. So, okay, well, that only leaves one thing to run for. She's not going to retire. So, the other weird thing is that maybe we're going to set off some controversy here, but I constantly hear from Democrat activists, mostly women, who say that they do not want a woman to be the nominee this time because they think that there is a lot of voters who simply will not vote for a woman for president. And, we've tried two, and this time we really need to win. And so we can't put up a woman. I don't necessarily agree with that, but, I hear that a lot. I don't know. Have you heard this?
I've not heard it, but I can see how Donald Trump would eat a female candidate alive in a way that he probably couldn't with a guy. And I felt like Newsom, when he took Trump on face to face, Trump kind of, in his weird, sick soul, if he has one, kind of respects people that stand up to him.
That is true.
Right? He left Claudia Sheinbaum alone after she stood up to him in Mexico.
That is true.
And so maybe this is an example of how to play it. Maybe Kamala Harris, because I'm convinced the Democrats will want to run Kamala Harris again. And I think that is already underway. That whole conversation is being had. But maybe Kamala Harris needs to do a little switcheroony with Gavin Newsom. She can go and run California as the governor, where she would be very welcome. And Newsom would then be free to stand up to Donald Trump, because that's what we need now. We don't need someone who is going to be the best person for progressive ideals. We need somebody who can take on Trump and actually, obliterate Donald Trump and his lies and his fascism. And Newsom, from what I've seen, has a practice in that and has demonstrated that, but he's also about 3 inches taller. Which in the height stakes plays very well.
Whitmer is very tall. I think she's like 6 foot tall, if I'm not mistaken.
Trump is 5'11" with lifts.
So, I mean, the two of them together would be pretty good ticket. We're a long ways off, and I'm not saying anything,
but it's important to plan early, because this is the mistake that Biden made, dropping out too late.
And I was talking about this with everybody at Midas today. I said, we have to get our candidate out earlier than normal.
Yeah.
I think my position is whoever wants to be the Democratic nominee for president in 2028 damn well better be out campaigning for Democrats in the midterms in 26, which is, they normally wouldn't do that. They normally would wait until after the midterms to get out there. But we have such a leadership vacuum right now. We have no DNC chair right now. We have no president. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the House. We got Schumer basically our leaders are like Schumer and Hakeem.
I know. And Schumer's press conferences. Oh, yeah, I've been watching those.
That's not going to get it done. I like Jeffries, Schumer. Schumer. But the point is, we have a leadership vacuum. The governors are our best young leaders.
Yeah.
And they need some of them who want to be president. They're going to need to get out there on the road a little early and help out some of these people running in 26. To me, like, who I back in 2028 is going to be the one who did the most to help other Democrats in 26. That's my mindset.
Let's just shift the subject a little bit. Patriot Front have been marching in D.C. And tell us about Mike Lee claiming that Patriot Front are the FBI. What's all this about?
This is nuts. I mean, these guys, it's a well-documented white nationalist group. They're all white. I mean, they don't hide who they are. Everybody knows. I've seen them in interviews many times. They've been arrested. I've seen their mug shots. Like, literally everybody knows who this group is. They're a bunch of idiots. They're knuckleheads, right? So they weren't like the people at January 6th. They're a lot of these young incel type weirdos.
Are they the Charlottesville troop?
I mean, kind of, like, maybe, sort of, but
right.
I think most of these guys are really just like wimpy posers, to be honest with you. They're not like tough guys in any way, right? but they march at a lot of different things and here and there. So, you know, what the right wing likes to, for some reason, activists, they do it every time. They claim that these are FBI agents. They're undercover FBI, like they did with January 6th. You know, everybody's FBI. And that, you know, it's one thing for like Cat Turd on Twitter to say, you know, these are FBI. Who cares? He wants to be an idiot. But this week, Mike Lee, I mean, a United States senator, actually came in and said, these are FBI. And I read like the reply. He was actually like interacting with the activists on there. And he was flat out saying these are FBI. And so first of all, two things came to mind for me. Number one, Donald Trump is president now. Like, so it's his FBI. So you're saying Donald Trump's FBI sent out a bunch of agents dressed up as these knuckleheads to try, for what purpose? Like, so that's the first part. And the second part, yeah, is like, why would the FBI be doing this? I mean, what their theory is, it's to make them look bad, you know, make right wingers look bad because they were marching at the Right to Life event. And so it's to like discredit the right to lifers. I mean, there's no way that the FBI would be able to hide something like that. And Mike Lee knows this. Mike Lee knows very well that these are not FBI agents. So why is he saying this? This is the $64,000 question, is why would Mike Lee tell his million followers on social media, right-wing followers, that these are FBI agents when he knows that they're not?
Well, maybe that's a rhetorical question, but I do have a theory. And that is that they worked out that they can say anything and a lot of the base will just buy it and say it.
So you think he just gets off on that? Like,
yeah.
I really, honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I honestly believe that Trump and his minions have realized that the truth is irrelevant. They can run with anything that they say, and then it gets repeated and shared, starts a rumor, and before you know it, you've created a whole alternative reality. And that's my concern about this regime going forward, is that truth has no value. I'm worried that the court system will have little value, although we've seen a little bit of court pressure being successful in the last 24 hours. But I do worry that Trump sees himself as the chief law enforcement officer, and whatever he says goes. And I think that people like Mike Lee are probably just in that camp where they're just like, well, let's just say they don't care. They don't care that it doesn't even make sense. I'll show a quick clip of this rally. Yeah, strong families, white people. I mean, these are just, it's just like a Trump rally.
Those look like FBI agents to you?
Oh, yeah, just like FBI agents. I mean, the other thing that's kind of fun is that a lot of Trump and Trump's people have forgotten that they are now the government. And so they're still criticizing as if Biden is the president and it's Biden's administration. And did you notice that this was even the case in Trump's inauguration speech, where he said, this government is da-da-da-da-da. And I was thinking, well, you've been president for like 20 minutes now. So clearly when this speech was written by Stephen Miller, 3 weeks ago, he was working on the assumption that Biden was still the president. I mean, it's the detail that bothers me.
I replied to Mike Lee on this, and that was my question. I said, how long does Trump have to be president before you're going to stop claiming that the deep state is doing all this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, at what point do we stop going with this line of attack? You run the government now.
And this is the thing. It's like the reality is that what we have seen in the last 7 or 8 days of this administration is exactly what you and I have been predicting, that there would be chaos and a scandal every single day. And currently it's somewhere between 1 and 5 scandals a day. It's a lot of extra work for us. And I recognize that people will have a great sense of buyer's remorse, the people that voted for Trump, because Joe Biden ran the country, and some people say it was so soporific that maybe nothing was happening. Well, that's the way to run a country, is to run it so that it doesn't feel like there's anything crazy going on. And now the keys have been given to the lunatics, the keys to the asylum been given to the lunatics, and we are going to have to get used to a very turbulent day after day. It's a lot for people.
Yeah, the comments that I don't like reading and hearing that I see a lot are people who say, I can't take this, I'm giving up, I'm giving in. And those are the most upsetting and distressing. And it's like, I understand, I get it, that this is going to be such a long 4 years and so much negativity and stuff, but we just can't give up. I mean, sooner or later, I'm an optimist. I always believe sooner or later the good guy wins, and the good people are going to win, and that's going to be us. But it's not going to happen if people give up and surrender or move to Canada.
Right. Well, I'm staying. Hopefully you are too. Trump's going to overplay his hand.
Unless you get deported.
Well, there is always that. I'm at least I won't have to pay for a flight.
He doesn't seem to be deporting any people from Europe, and that's the other thing. Is like we have 600,000 immigrants here from Europe that aren't citizens. I haven't seen any of them loaded on any planes yet.
Well, it's because they're white. Okay. Thank you. Love you and your work. Thank you for your service as well. And if you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that later tonight. Drops wherever you get yours. If you want to watch this again, then rewind and share. Sorry about my voice. I've had the flu for the last 5 days. Man flu, pretty bad. So I hope that it doesn't sound very good in my ears. Hopefully it's coming out all right. But I'll be back to health next week. Ron, thanks very much. Catch you next week.
All right, you got it.